Welcome to the Business Women Australia podcast show, the podcast that brings together industry leaders to discuss the latest trends, insights, and strategies. So sit back and relax. Let's get inspired by the amazing women who are shaping the future of professional women in Australia. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Welcome everyone to our Business Women Australia podcast show. My name is Leanne Jeffery and I'm your host. And today I have with us the special guest who has brought to us before about the 5 mistakes to avoid when you're leading change. She's helped people to choose change, which is sometimes actually quite a difficult thing to do when, things happen in life, and how to actively make it better. And today she's going to bring with her in her infinite and amazing wisdom, as always, the power of pause. And we just saw a little Hugo in the background wiggling his little tail. Welcome, Tracy Cooper, who is Tracy Cooper Change Specialist.
Thank you, Leanne. It's lovely to be here again. It's always nice to appear on the BWI podcast. Yeah.
And today we're talking about the benefits of how people can take a step back and breathe and see the bigger picture. And you've been working on this and with people for so many years now. That you see a lot of people, where I've mentioned numerous times whenever we've talked about this, I know I have a monkey brain, and I dare say you would have seen it in all forms, shapes and sizes. And with that, a lot of people, we talk about a pause and what it means. How does that look like for people? How do they take that on board? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Leanne, to see people's reactions when I talk about the power of the pause and pausing. And I guess literally what it means is to stop. Just stop and take stock and prevent yourself from continuing to plow on or to just keep pushing through. I'm a huge fan of, we need to at times just catch our breath, but also to be able to have some quiet reflection time to make sense of what's going on and be able to, I guess, as I said, take stock, but it also, what's this mean, and therefore what are my next steps? So it literally does mean stopping, but it doesn't have to mean for a long time. And we can do this as an individual, we can do it as a team, and that's how I help people in organizations and in my coaching. I actually help people pause individually, but I also help teams come together and do it. And it's I'll talk about the benefits a bit later, but it really is about just stop doing stop doing the busyness, stop going with what everything is going on, and just to be able to reflect and take stock of where you're at. Yeah.
And I think that's an important step that so many of us miss these days. We've got projects, we've got deadlines, we've got KPIs to meet, and everyone can be a bit of a bull out of a gate. And we don't think that actually by stopping, having that breath, that we can do more.
Yeah, I think I grew up on a farm, and my dad was always a big influence, and mum and dad, but he was the sort of guy that he would say things like, don't stand around talking, just get in and do, that sort of stuff. And I think it's part of our culture to be able to all feel comfortable that we're doing something, like we're actually physically doing something, or we're pushing through and doing the job. And standing around talking or sitting around talking isn't seen to be doing something, whereas it's quite the opposite for me. It's actually, you can actually structure when you do your talking and you're pausing to be so beneficial and so useful. So I think your words there was just dive in, bull at the gate. I think before we even start something is to pause, but it's the pausing regularly throughout the project as well, and not just when the project finishes. I've been talking to so many people, Leanne, as you would be, coming up to Christmas, and they're like, oh, I can't wait till Christmas. I just can't wait for a rest, and I'll have time to think then. And I actually challenge them and say, why don't you have time to think now? And for me, that's really important, is helping people to develop the habit of regularly pausing and making it part of the project, of their daily work, of their weekly reflection, not just diving in and do and do and do and do, because generally that doesn't always create success.
And I think you hit the nail on the head. We're so used to coming from this generation where we've had to be busy. And if you weren't busy and if you weren't always on the go, it was almost, you were lazy.
Yeah.
And we never considered that actually stopping to rethink and restructure is a positive. And
yes,
it's changing generations of mindset of how it works.
Yeah, it is, and it's a big challenge because we've, if around us we've always thought about we've got to keep busy, and like when I greet people, how you going? Oh, busy. I'm so busy. There's people that I know are the busiest people in Australia. Like it's not necessarily the badge of honour that I would like to wear. It's about how we moderate our lives and how we actually keep that balance by. Yes, looking after our health and just not running ourselves into the ground, but also there is so many benefits to pausing that it's actually get a better outcome, not just to get the job done, to get it finished. It's like, well, hang on a minute, are we still on track? Are we still, has things changed around us? Do we need to shift focus? Do we need to remain relevant? So there's a few benefits to, yes, getting the job done, but it's also, is it the best job? Is it the best outcome? Are we including everybody when we do this pausing together as a team, including the ideas of everybody, that we can develop that synergy to get a great outcome together?
And what do you ask yourself, like when it comes for you to time to pause, like what kind of questions do you ask yourself when you have to pause?
That's a very good question, because it's not just, oh, I'm pausing, and you stop and you sit there, that's important to catch your breath, but literally sometimes. But it's also, I like to structure that pausing, and I do it naturally now, but this is how I help my clients. But there's questions, and I use a model called the action learning cycle, which I studied at university just a few years ago, and I've been using it in all of my career, in my life, in our family businesses. I do it regularly, and it's got 4 stages to it, and it's about, we can learn from taking action. So there's the act stage, which is what's been happening. Let's just hang on, what's been happening, and get that out. And then we have the reflect stage. So based on what's been happening, how am I feeling? Really important question. How am I feeling? And sometimes it's hard to articulate how we feel, and sometimes we can have several feelings about how we're feeling. Then, in that reflect stage, it's like, okay, so what's going well with what's been happening, the actions we've been taking, what's going well and what's not going well. So it's getting that balanced view to be able to then take yourself around to, so based on that, what are we realizing and or learning from the actions we've been taking? So you can see how you can apply this to whether it's a project, an activity you're doing, your health and well-being, your fitness program, anything that you're planning an event. It's like, so from what's been happening, what's going well, not well, what are we learning or realizing, and then what are our next steps, which is the plan stage, the 4th stage, which is what will I, and I ask these questions, I've added to the cycle, which is, what will I keep doing? What will I stop doing, and what will I start doing? And I've pinched that from the Australian netball team, but that's what they often do post a game. They pause and each player reflects. But it's to be able to, when you think about your next steps, it's about, well, what will I keep doing? Because that's working. Now, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. That is working. What will I stop doing? Because it's clearly not working for me or for others. So let's just stop that. But what would I like to start doing? What's some ideas we've got to try? So you can see these 4 questions, Leanne, or 4 stages. You can ask them of yourself, but it's really powerful also when you ask a team to contribute around those 4 stages of the cycle. So they're the ones that I ask.
And I think using a sport team, especially netball, because we're big netball fans in this household. A lot of the people think, you train, you play, you train, you play. They don't realize that, well, after a game, they'll go back, they'll watch the videos, they'll reflect on what they've done. and they will learn most also when things go wrong. But they're athletes. They're not just training and structuring. They're reflecting on each game. And if a top-level athlete can take time to do it,
yes,
I think we can all take a little bit of that as well.
Oh, definitely. And I think we are used to it. I mean, Australians were very used to our sporting culture. And, I often say to people, we have half time and we have quarter time, depending on what sport you're playing, for a reason. It's not just to eat the oranges and catch your breath. There's a bit of strategy. Well, there's a bit of reflecting that goes on and some strategy that happens at that time. And when you look at and talk to high-level sports people who achieve, or any sports people, you actually, to continuously improve, it is taking that time to draw and learn from the experiences that you're having. So and same goes for, even if you're not into sport, the theatre. I went to see Wicked a few weeks ago, the stage show. It was wonderful. And of course, intermission, at 15 or 20 minutes, it's time for the actors to catch their breath, reflect, change outfits, probably do a few things, but time for us as the audience to, get some fresh air and so forth. So when you think about it, there are many parts in our life that there is pauses, and the same can go for us in our work and in our work teams. It can be applied there as well. And I just don't, at times, some workplaces encourage it enough. They actually just come on, we've got so much to do. But if we actually tried to look at how much time could we save, how much more ideas could we develop if we just paused for sure, like even an hour, for a team that's working on a major project could come up with some great ideas and way forward based on the actions they've been taking. So it can really apply to business as well.
So, with the benefits of taking time to pause, breathe, and reflect, why do you think we find it so hard to do that?
I think we've already sort of touched on this a little bit, but it's a bit like we don't feel like we're doing something if we're thinking. Say if it's an individual, if I'm just sitting here thinking, let alone jotting some thoughts down. But to me, that's time very well spent, because I find it way too hard, Leanne, to actually think and change step. I mean, I did a bit when I used to play sport on the run. It's hard to do. So it's actually that moment that you can just say, hang on a minute, what's going on here? And like I say, I do it. I did it this morning. I was working on a project and I was getting overwhelmed and I was feeling flustered, and I just thought, let's just pause for a minute, Tracy. Swallow some of your own medicine. What's been happening? And I did it. And it took me about. I went and made a cup of coffee and I sat there it just helped me to be able to just get some clarity. So I think we find it hard to do because, well, I personally think it's because we don't think we're doing stuff. And if people see us sitting there thinking, are you working? yes, I am. I'm just coming up with ideas. But I think it is, like, as we said earlier, I think it's a bit of a cultural thing. And busyness seems to be, the number of times I have people say, I'm so busy, I don't have time to stop. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, therein lies probably the challenge.
Well, and I find that, so personally, because I can only speak from my own experiences, one of the things I do outside of Business Women Australia is, I give my time to community. And I think we also get this sense of responsibility. If I don't do it, no one else would do it. And we kind of put more and more on our plate because we think that we need to do it. And one of the things I found with the community events is I had so much on my plate. I was so busy trying to do it all that I realized I had to stop. I thought, what would Tracy do? I took a step back and I actually wrote down all the jobs that I need to do. And then I looked at him and went, well, Leanne, you're not omnipotent. You can't do everything. And then I took the jobs and started delegating and get helpers. And it's a volunteer position. Everyone can volunteer. As soon as I took your advice and actually paused for it, volunteers stepped up. My plate became empty and I became a lot less busy. And things actually went better because I wasn't doing everything.
Yeah, that's a really, really good realization and learning there, Leanne, because I think there's a lot connected to how we manage our time, how we manage our priorities, how we manage our life. And what you were just describing is sometimes what's the root cause there, which is either A, you weren't letting go of things, and this is probably in that act, reflect, learn stage, is the learn stage. Why are you having the challenges that you are? Because you're not delegating, or I can't let that go, or so forth. All right, so what will I plan to do? Because I can't keep going on like I am. So yeah, I think it's it's that power to be able to openly identify why you're having the challenges. But there's a lot of links between, when you pause, as to finding here's the rhyme, find the cause of what some of your challenges are, and fix those, identifying that. And that's what that learning part of the action learning cycle does. You actually, you're diagnosing why you're having the challenges you are. Or let's be positive too, why you're having the wins. You know, that good story about it's not just good luck or good management. And sometimes when something works, it's just as important that you pause and say, why'd that work? So we come down to what's the realization there? Why did that work? Why were we successful? What was the cause? What was behind it? And so next time we will repeat that and keep going with the things that we did because it worked.
And how have you found that the power of the pause has helped you?
Oh, immeasurably. It's like I just explained this morning, because I was getting a bit overwhelmed with things. I actually paused, but it's also, I think what it does, Leanne, is help me remain relevant. Because when you set out on a journey, maybe it's a project, maybe it's a personal goal, or something like that. Things change around us, like the world changes around us, and that's part of what I think about too as a change specialist, that we have to remain relevant with what we're doing. So if we keep going and just plowing on with the intention, put our head down and keep going, we may lift our head eventually and go, hang on, the world shifted around us and it's not relevant anymore, or some goalposts really shifted. So I think what it's done for me is really helped me remain relevant. And it also helps me come up with different options. Often when I'm presented with a challenge, or I don't know how to answer this type stuff, and the pause might be over a few different days. I'll just come back to it. I'll come back to it and not rush a decision. If it doesn't have to be made right now, it doesn't have to be made right now. And over time, it can come. I recently was on a walking holiday in Italy, and I tell you what, I needed the power of the pause there several times. And I was walking with some friends, and we talked a lot about this. They know about the power of the pause and the action learning cycle. But there was one particular day, I was physically quite spent. We were probably doing about 15 Ks, up and down hills, through creek beds and things like that. And my friend said to me, do you need to stop? And I said, yes, I do. And I sat there for a while, and I had to try and work out what was the problem. Was I hungry? I actually felt like we might have been a bit lost. There was a few different things going on, but after we sat for a while, refueled, had some water, talked about where we were at, I checked in with them, they checked in with me. It actually gave me a bit of motivation to say, no, I think we are on the right track and we need to keep going. But continuing to try and plow on. And I actually, at that moment, thought, this is the stuff I talk about all the time in my work, is that power of stopping, not just because I was physically spent. It was also about all the other things that were going on in my mind, because it's managing the mind as well to be able to pause. So yeah, I use it in all parts of my life.
And that's it. It's the prevention of the overwhelm as well, I think. Because we get to the point where we're so overwhelmed, all we feel like we've got to do is to keep going.
Yeah, and when you get overwhelmed, I'm not sure if you feel this, but when I get overwhelmed, I literally cannot think straight, and I start to catastrophize. I start to rush decisions. It's not logical, maybe what I'm coming up with, that sort of stuff. And when that creeps in, I don't think we're making really sound decisions. So I often say, don't make a decision until you really have to, because it's the pausing that when you actually can think through things to get some clarity. But that overwhelm can really blur my thinking. And when I pause and just literally take in some deep breaths, but also just I have to write when I pause as well. I jot things down and talk. I like to talk when I pause. That helps. It does become a little bit clearer, but the overwhelm can really take over. So that's what pause does. It slows down that overwhelm and the impact of overwhelm.
And that's what I found is it's once you start getting it out of your brain, writing or talking about it, it almost frees up that little bit of space so you can make a rational decision.
Bingo, there it is. That's it, Leanne, because you can actually get a clearer path to the. I'm moving my hands like a path. We can get to a better outcome or decision because it's a little bit clearer. I can see that over there in the distance what it is. Whereas when it's murky and foggy, I went for a walk the other day and I was on the hill behind Brisbane and I could not see, fog, can't see stuff. Whereas if there's fog in the mind, it's not easy to make decisions or what are my next steps.
And I think, people don't realize because we're so used, like, once again, going back to that, we're so used to being busy and in control that verbalizing it. So when I felt overwhelmed with the community events and I verbalized and I said, my plate is full, I have these tasks, all of a sudden, everybody else who had a lot less fog came in going, I'll take that, I'll take that,
I'll take that. Yeah.
And then I have capacity to help others.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. You've said it really well too, Leanne. When you actually do, it's not surrendering, but when you put up your hand, when you're collectively working, you can actually go, we can help each other. That's the key. But if you don't put up your hand, you won't get the help, or someone may not notice that you're struggling. Yeah.
And for me, it may have been a bit of an ego thing. Like if I've put my hand up to do this, I should be able to do it. So letting go of the ego was probably the best thing. I don't know if so much it was ego or the feeling of responsibility for a task.
Yeah, it can be obviously both. It can be both. Yeah. And I think this is where it's when we pause, we can realize these things about ourselves because, we hear it often. Life is about a journey. And if we keep burrowing away and keep going, where is the time to actually go, I've just had an aha moment or a light bulb moment about myself. I've just had a realization. I've just had a learning. And what you just said there, Leanne, was about whether it was ego, whether it was responsibility. If we don't pause, I sometimes think it's harder to find those realizations. And when we find those realizations, we can either then ask for help and or come up with some of our own remedies. But yeah.
And so when you're working with your clients, how do you actually help them step through how they can find their power in the pause?
Well, I'll tell you a quick story. I was coaching someone a few weeks ago, actually, and when she came onto the coaching call, I said, how are you? She said, I'm so overwhelmed. That was the first thing she said, and she dropped her head. And I said, okay. And this quote came into my mind, which I often talk about, Leanne, which is, if you ever find yourself in a hole, the first thing you need to do is stop digging. And she said, I'm overwhelmed. I said, what do you feel? She said, I feel I just have to keep going. And I thought, right, here we go. And I said, let's just have some power of the pause here. So I just asked her some questions around those cycles. I said to her, the cycle, I said, what's been happening? Let's spend about 5 minutes. Tell me what's been happening. So she went through all those things and told me what's been happening. And I said, okay, let's move to the next stage, which is reflect. How are you feeling? And she had about 3 different feelings of how she's feeling: excited, overwhelmed, but so forth. And then I said, so what's going well? She said, I said, what's going well? Let's get some perspective there. So she dug around and she found some wells and some wins to celebrate. And then we had some not so wells. So then I moved her down into the learning phase. So this all we got to learning, and then she started to have some realizations, a bit like what you just had before. Mm-hmm. Is it ego? Can I not let go? There was some stuff there, which led her then to the keep, stop, start. What's she going to keep doing? And this took 20 minutes in a coaching session. So, it doesn't have to take forever, but she was fairly overwhelmed. But they're the sort of things that I do with individuals. In the coming week, I've got 2 teams I'm working with that we've got quite large teams, and we're breaking into small groups, and we're doing this together. So we're walking around the cycle together. It is so powerful, Leanne, to watch a team do this together, because they start to express themselves. This is what's been happening for me, and others go, really? I didn't realise that was going on for you, type stuff. And then the wells and the not wells. And the benefits for teams are to listen to each other. They gain perspective. But what actually starts to happen when they start to realise down in that learning phase of the action learning cycle is, this is what we're learning together. This is what I've learned, but this is what we're learning about this project, or whatever it is that we're working on. So it's very, very powerful. That doesn't take 20 minutes. It can take about an hour to get that done, or a little bit more. But it's very powerful to open up the communication channels and get to some outcome. So it's not just like pausing as a team and going, oh, we're so tired, and it's been a big year. It's like, yes, but we put some structure into the conversation. So by the end of it, we've got some realizations in that learning phase, but we've also got some things that we're going to keep doing, stop doing, and start doing. So that's how I do it, individually or with teams.
I think, the benefit of having the team go through it and creating that more cohesive environment. It's not just about pausing that once and the team go, okay, we've gotten together and we've done this. It's about creating that knock-on effect, so they're not getting to December and going, oh, I'm just waiting for that break.
Yes. Yeah.
They're constantly going through those cycles with you.
Yeah, I think one of the things is that I just said it earlier about, we get to Christmas and everyone's looking for a break. I'm on a journey to really, to help people make this a regular habit. Like for teams, they can do it monthly. In my team, I've done it monthly, and I learn things from my team members that I actually didn't know or didn't realize. So it's a conversation piece that you're having, but it's that regular habit of pausing. And I just really want to make that point again, that it's not when things are going poorly, and it's also when things are working. So it's just do it anyway. So it becomes a regular monthly thing between a team. And I often say, if a team can't spend an hour once a month coming together and they prepare their thinking, they get used to using the action learning cycle, they bring their what's been happening, and they bring their reflections, wells and not wells. Sometimes they've got some learning, but they work on that together, and in an hour they can come up with some really good stuff if you put some structure into it. So as you say, it's that not just once, and it can create a knock-on effect, but it's developing the habit to be doing it regularly. And I get so excited when I have people come back to me and say, we just had an action learning meeting last Friday. Guess what? It's like, oh my gosh, they're still doing it. They're still doing it. And it can really help teams to not just get through the day or through the week because I'm exhausted. It actually, as I said earlier, it's about coming up with better ideas, because you're building on each other's ideas when you're sharing your action learning together. So you come up with really good next steps together.
And not just that, I say the environment when you create, when you have that trust that you can go, okay, let's get together and discuss this. For me, that's a huge thing in a work environment to help create that. So by opening this up, the trust, the pause, the reflection, the bonding, I think it's just the hugest benefits for teams.
Oh, you bring up such a good point, Leanne. It really does help with trust. So when a team starts to do this, they might be a little bit guarded, or they may not be, but all it takes is one person to be a little bit vulnerable and say, this is not going well for me. And then it's a little bit like a ripple effect. It can actually start, then others start to do it. And it's a very good way for people to openly own things, but also to express themselves. And you're spot on. It actually really helps with building trust. Not just what I was going on about before, which is getting better outcomes and progressing a project and catching your breath. It's a really great way to build trust in a team.
Yeah, I love that so much. And we're just about at time. So before we head out, how can people find you to help you build this in their teams or individually?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. I put quite a lot of stuff on LinkedIn, so I post regularly, and they can send me a message there. So Tracy is Tracy without an E, Tracy Cooper. Or they can email me, Leanne, which is Tracy, Tracy, at tracycooper.au. I'd love to have a talk to people. I always like to just have a chat about their situation and so forth. And if I can help them, we go from there. So that's how they can find me.
And of course, as always, you are on at the Business Women Australia website too, if people want to reach out to you through there.
I am. I really enjoy being part of Business Women Australia. It's a great. I'll give such a plug to the organisation. It's a great bunch of women who come together, and we regularly we're trying to get some events happening here in Brisbane, but it's a good way to pause and come together and share with colleagues as well. So there's my little plug for Business Women
And
Australia.
actually, if people keep an eye on the website, I know there is a Brisbane event coming up. And you will be there.
I will be. Yes, it's coming up. We're going to move it to February. We were going to have it in just before Christmas, but there's a lot of people away on leave. So the actually event is going to be in the 27th of February. So I will be there hosting it with Helen Ann. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Leanne. As always, a great conversation. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to the Business Women Australia podcast show. We hope you've enjoyed today's episode and gained some valuable insights to empower you on your journey. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe to stay updated in our latest episodes. And if you're not already a member of Business Women Australia, what are you waiting for? Head to our website today and join so that you can connect with a thriving community of inspiring women across Australia. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.